The NFL is a league of secrets, whispered rumors, and calculated risks. But for one franchise, the Cleveland Browns, their destiny was just exposed in the most public yet silent way imaginable. Forget the war rooms, the scout reports, the mock drafts. What if I told you the players themselves, the undisputed kings of the locker room, just staged a silent coup, anointing their next quarterback on the practice field? What if Myles Garrett, the physical monster who is the soul of that defense, didn't just offer a casual greeting, but a coronation with a single handshake? And what if Jerry Jeudy, a receiver whose route running is surgical, suddenly stared at his future, at the quarterback who could finally definitively unlock his generational talent? This isn't speculation. This is the explosive, unbelievable truth of how Shedeur Sanders walked onto a Cleveland practice field, didn't just audition, but took ownership and kicked off a civil war among the fan base and the front office. The whispers are now a roar. The Browns' history's greatest tragedy may have just stumbled upon their long-awaited messiah, and the evidence is chilling. In the cold, unforgiving world of the National Football League, revolutions don't always begin with a press conference or a blockbuster trade announcement. Sometimes they start in the quiet hum of a practice field with a single loaded glance. They ignite with a handshake that carries the unspoken weight of a dynasty's future. And on a day that began like any other in Berea, Ohio, the Cleveland Browns franchise didn't just witness a tremor, it experienced a seismic, ground-shattering event that has sent shockwaves through the entire league. Myles Garrett, the mythological beast who wears number 95, a man who feasts on quarterbacks for a living, let his guard down in a moment that was captured on film, but whose true meaning was felt only by those present. He didn't just greet the visiting Shedeur Sanders, he silently anointed him. At the same time, Jerry Jeudy, a receiver whose feet move with the precision of a surgeon's scalpel, wasn't just observing a college phenom. He was staring at his football soulmate, the quarterback who could unlock his full potential. Forget everything you thought you knew about rookie visits and pre-draft workouts. What unfolded on that field was not an evaluation. It was a silent, bloodless coup. It was a coronation conducted not in a palace with velvet robes, but on turf, in cleats, and practice jerseys. While the number crunchers and analytics gurus in the front office were undoubtedly poring over data and draft projections, the true soul of the team, the Warriors who bleed for the jersey on Sundays, made their own verdict. They saw the future stride onto their field, not with the nervous energy of a hopeful, but with the gravitational pull of a monarch. They didn't just roll out the welcome mat, they bent the knee. Has the Cleveland Browns franchise, a team whose history is a masterclass in snatching defeat from the jaws of victory, accidentally stumbled upon its long-awaited messiah? The whispers that leaked from that facility have now morphed into a deafening citywide roar. Cleveland is fracturing, caught in a fan-fueled civil war, because the explosive truth is out. Shedeur Sanders didn't just visit, he took ownership, and the team's most respected generals have already sworn their allegiance. This is the chilling, unbelievable story of how a few throws, one handshake, and a gallon of unshakable swagger may have just ripped up the Browns' playbook and rewritten their destiny forever. The air on the practice field that Wednesday was thick with the mundane rhythm of drills and repetition. It was the familiar soundtrack of an NFL team in motion, the pop of pads, the bark of coaches, the grunts of superhuman athletes. Then he arrived. Shedeur Sanders didn't just walk onto the field, he made an entrance. It was less like a rookie prospect and more like the star of a movie walking onto the set. The designer shades, the meticulously chosen athletic wear, the subtle but unmistakable aura of a man who knows his own value. It all commanded attention. The ambient noise of the practice seemed to dip for a fraction of a second, the collective consciousness of the team shifting to register his presence. This is when the moment that would launch 1,000 conspiracy theories happened. Myles Garrett, a physical specimen so dominant he often looks like a glitch in the Matrix, broke away from his drills. He moved towards Sanders with a deliberate stride. This wasn't the casual, half-hearted greeting veterans often give to visiting college kids. There was an intent in his eyes, a purpose in his movement. As he extended his hand, everyone who was watching, whether on the field or through a camera lens, held their breath. The handshake itself was a piece of theater. It wasn't a quick professional squeeze. It was a slow, meaningful grip, the kind where messages are exchanged without a single word being spoken. Garrett's eyes locked onto Shedeur's. You could practically see the dialogue unfolding, the unspoken recognition, the mutual respect between two apex predators. In that extended moment, Garrett, the undisputed king of the Browns locker room transferred a piece of his authority. He wasn't just saying, "Welcome." He was saying, "I see you. You belong here. You are the standard." It was a silent endorsement so powerful that it rendered any future statement from the front office almost irrelevant. The players had spoken. For a franchise that has been starved of legitimate quarterback leadership for a generation, this was a watershed moment. Garrett has had to shoulder the burden of being the face of the franchise, often playing with a supporting cast on offense that ranged from mediocre to disastrous. He has watched quarterbacks come and go like seasons, each one failing to provide the stability and elite play needed to truly contend. His handshake with Shedeur was a manifestation of years of frustration and a glimmer of profound hope. It was the look of a weary warrior who finally sees reinforcements arriving on the horizon. He saw in Shedeur not just arm talent, but the it factor, the unteachable magnetic confidence that separates the good from the truly great. He saw a man who wasn't intimidated by the stage, but one who was born for it. Other players noticed. The defensive line watched their leader give a sign of respect they had rarely seen him offer. The offensive linemen, men who have spent years protecting a revolving door of quarterbacks, saw a potential franchise anchor. The energy on the field had irrevocably shifted. It was no longer just the Cleveland Browns practice field. It was Shedeur Sanders' audition stage, and the star player had just given him a standing ovation. Meanwhile, Jerry Jeudy was conducting his own more subtle evaluation. As a receiver, his entire career is dependent on the person throwing him the football. He's a virtuoso of the route tree, capable of creating separation against any corner in the league. But that artistry is meaningless if the ball doesn't arrive when and where it's supposed to. He has experienced the frustration of playing with inconsistent quarterback play. So when Shedeur stepped up to take his reps, Jeudy watched with the discerning eye of a diamond cutter inspecting a raw stone. The conditions were deliberately hostile. This was no 7-on-7 drill in shorts. Shedeur was leading the second-team offense, a collection of backups and hopefuls against the Browns' first-team defense, a unit teeming with Pro Bowlers. It was designed to be a pressure cooker, a test of his mettle. They expected him to be rattled, to rush his throws, to look like a college kid out of his depth. What they got instead was a masterclass in composure. After a single incompletion on his first drop back, a play where the pocket collapsed almost instantly, Shedeur showed no signs of panic. His internal clock didn't speed up, it seemed to slow down. The next two passes were pure art. He moved gracefully within the chaos, his eyes scanning the field, his body a coiled spring of potential energy. He released the ball with a flick of the wrist that was both effortless and powerful. The spirals were tight, cutting through the air and hitting his backup receivers in stride. 2 for 3, passing with a smart rush to escape pressure. It was a small sample size, but for a connoisseur like Jeudy, it was a feast. He saw it all. The mechanics, the vision, the preternatural calm. After one of the completions, Jeudy was seen nodding almost imperceptibly, a silent signal that said everything. It was the professional equivalent of love at first sight. That wasn't just a quarterback, that was his quarterback. The chemistry was palpable, an invisible current of football understanding that connected the two men across the field. In that moment, the dream of a Jeudy Sanders connection wasn't just a fan fantasy, it became a tangible, tantalizing possibility. To grasp the earth-shattering importance of these subtle gestures, one must first descend into the haunted catacombs of Cleveland Browns quarterback history. It is not merely a story of mediocrity, it is a sprawling, multi-decade epic of failure, a Shakespearean tragedy played out in cleats. The infamous quarterback jersey with its ever-growing list of names crossed out is not just a fan-made novelty, it is a sacred artifact of suffering, a testament to a curse so profound it feels biblical. The number is almost comical in its absurdity. Over 30 different starting quarterbacks since the team's return in 1999. It's a roster of ghosts that haunt the franchise to this day. It began with Tim Couch, the very first pick, the supposed savior who was broken by a porous offensive line and the immense weight of expectation. Then came a parade of forgettable names and squandered hopes. There was Brady Quinn, the handsome hometown hero from Notre Dame, whose NFL career never matched his collegiate hype. There was the chaotic, electrifying, and ultimately self-destructive supernova that was Johnny Manziel, a walking headline whose off-field antics created a circus that consumed the entire organization. His tenure was a cautionary tale of talent squandered and potential incinerated. Then came Baker Mayfield. For a fleeting moment, it seemed the curse was broken. He was brash, charismatic, and he led the Browns to their first playoff victory in a generation. The city fell in love with his underdog spirit, but his swagger eventually curdled into a contentious ego, and a bitter public divorce left the franchise once again standing at the altar, jilted and alone. Most recently, the franchise made the most controversial move in its history, trading a king's ransom of draft picks and handing out the largest guaranteed contract in NFL history to Deshaun Watson. A move that brought with it immense public scrutiny and a cloud of off-field issues. The on-field results have yet to justify the monumental cost, leaving the organization in a precarious position both financially and reputationally. This relentless cycle of hope and despair has inflicted a deep psychological wound on the city of Cleveland. The fans have developed a hardened, cynical shell as a defense mechanism. They are conditioned to expect the worst, to wait for the other shoe to drop. This is the heavy, toxic atmosphere that Shedeur Sanders walked into. He didn't just step onto a practice field, he stepped into the epicenter of a quarterback graveyard, a place where careers and dreams have been routinely buried for over 20 years. And yet, he seemed utterly unfazed by the ghosts. He didn't carry the burden of the past. He arrived with his own aura, his own narrative, projecting a future so bright it threatened to banish the franchise's long-standing shadows. This is why the reactions of Garrett and Jeudy resonated so deeply. They weren't just endorsing a player, they were challenging the curse itself. They were signaling to the front office and the world that perhaps, just perhaps, this one was different. And the Sanders Empire. Shedeur Sanders is not just a player, he is an empire. He is the vanguard of a new breed of athlete, one who was forged in the crucible of the modern media landscape. To understand him is to understand the tectonic shift in college and professional sports. He is the ultimate creation of the name, image, and likeness, NIL era, a world where a player's brand is as valuable as his arm strength. From the moment he stepped onto a college campus, he wasn't just a quarterback. He was a CEO, a content creator, and a marketing phenomenon. His father, the legendary Deion coach Prime Sanders, didn't just teach him how to read defenses, he taught him how to build a global brand. The Sanders journey has been a masterclass in leveraging influence. At Jackson State, a historically black college and university, HBCU, they didn't just win games. They created a cultural movement. The Prime effect brought unprecedented attention, television deals, and revenue to the school. Cameras followed their every move. Shedeur was not a background character. He was the co-star learning under the brightest spotlight imaginable. When they moved to the University of Colorado, they turned a 1-11 team into the biggest story in all of sports. Ticket sales skyrocketed, merchandise flew off the shelves, every game was a nationally televised event. Shedeur thrived in this environment. He didn't just perform on the field, he performed for the cameras, for the sponsors, for his millions of social media followers. His post-game press conferences became must-see TV, where he would flaunt his expensive watches and deliver sound bites with the cool detachment of a seasoned celebrity. He learned that in today's world, perception is reality. Even in defeat, he controlled the narrative. He turned devastating losses into moments of personal brand building, projecting an image of unflappable cool. This is the man who walked into the Browns facility. He didn't come seeking validation. He brought his own. He is a walking, talking business entity with a built-in marketing funnel that would make a Fortune 500 company jealous. This is a language that traditional NFL front offices are still struggling to learn, but it is one that modern players like Garrett and Jeudy understand perfectly. They see a young man who has already mastered the pressures of fame, who has been living under a microscope for years. They see a player who doesn't fear the spotlight, but actively seeks it, who understands that his performance on Sunday is intrinsically linked to his brand on Monday. He's not trying to get a seat at the NFL's table. He's building a bigger, more extravagant table next to it and inviting people over. The Browns are now faced with a reality they may not have been prepared for. They aren't just considering drafting a quarterback, they are considering a merger with the Sanders Empire. It's a proposition that is as terrifying to the old guard as it is tantalizing to the players who recognize that Shedeur Sanders isn't just playing football, he is changing the very fabric of the game. The true genius of Shedeur's performance in Cleveland can be found in the details of his on-field test. The Browns coaching staff didn't roll out the red carpet for him. They didn't put him in a position to succeed. They did the opposite. They threw him into the deep end of the pool with anvils tied to his feet by placing him with the second-team offense. They surrounded him with players who are fighting for roster spots, players who are not the finely tuned instruments of the starting lineup. The offensive line was a makeshift unit, not the cohesive wall that protects a starting quarterback. His receivers were not named Amari Cooper or Jerry Jeudy. They were men he had no timing or rapport with. Then they pitted this ragtag group against the monster lurking on the other side of the ball, the Browns' first-team defense. This is not just any defense. It is arguably the most terrifying and dominant unit in the entire league. Led by the Defensive Player of the Year, Myles Garrett, it features Pro Bowl cornerbacks like Denzel Ward, who can erase a team's top receiver. It is a complex, aggressive scheme designed to confuse and punish even the most seasoned veteran quarterbacks. This was not a test. It was an ambush. It was a scenario designed to humble the hyped college star, to expose his weaknesses and force him into mistakes. It was a classic welcome to the NFL moment intended to show him how much he still had to learn. But the plan backfired spectacularly. Shedeur didn't just survive the onslaught, he thrived in it. He looked completely unfazed, his demeanor as calm as if he were playing a game of catch in his backyard. He processed information at lightning speed, recognizing blitzes and adjusting on the fly. He demonstrated an innate feel for the pocket, sliding and climbing to evade pressure from a collapsing line. He didn't just throw to open receivers, he threw his receivers open, placing the ball in spots where only they could get it, away from the predatory instincts of the Browns' defensive backs. That 2-for-3 stat line doesn't begin to tell the whole story. The completions were made under duress, into tight windows, against elite defenders. The poise he displayed was something that cannot be taught. It was the mark of a player who has supreme confidence in his abilities, a player who believes he is the best man on the field regardless of the circumstances. By trying to set him up for failure, the Browns inadvertently gave him the perfect stage to showcase his greatest strengths. They threw him to the wolves, and he came back leading the pack. This performance resonated deeply within the locker room. The players on that field, on both sides of the ball, recognized what they had seen. It wasn't just a talented kid making a few good throws. It was a future franchise quarterback passing an impossible test with flying colors. Imagine the scene inside the Cleveland Browns front office in the hours and days following Shedeur's visit. The atmosphere must have been electric, with a mixture of excitement and sheer panic. On one hand, you have the analytics department, the numbers guys who have built their careers on data, algorithms, and probability models. Their spreadsheets and charts likely told a cautious story, weighing Shedeur's college production against the level of competition and projecting his potential transition to the NFL. They are the voice of reason, the faction that preaches prudence and warns against the dangers of buying into hype. They would point to Deshaun Watson's colossal contract as a monumental anchor on the team's salary cap, a financial reality that makes drafting another quarterback a complex and perilous proposition. On the other hand, you have the deafening roar of anecdotal evidence. You have the reports from the coaches and scouts who were on the field. More importantly, you have the implicit, undeniable endorsement from your team's most important leaders, Myles Garrett and Jerry Jeudy. How do you quantify a handshake? How do you input instantaneous chemistry into a spreadsheet? The front office, led by General Manager Andrew Barry, is now caught in a brutal crossfire between the old way of thinking and the new reality playing out before their eyes. The eye test screamed superstar, but the financial and logistical realities scream complication. The pressure is immense. The fan base, once a unified front of misery, is now a fractured and volatile entity, with the Draft Shedeur movement gaining unstoppable momentum online. The national media has seized upon the story, turning a simple practice visit into a full-blown soap opera. Every sports talk show is debating the future of the Browns, amplifying the pressure on the organization 100-fold. They are trapped. If they ignore the obvious signs and pass on Shedeur, only to watch him become a legend for a rival team, the backlash would be catastrophic. It would be a fireable offense for everyone involved, a failure that would haunt the franchise for another 20 years. But if they make a move for him, it would require a level of daring and financial gymnastics that could also blow up in their faces, creating a quarterback controversy and potentially alienating their current, very expensive starter. The Browns' war room has become a philosophical battleground. It's a clash between data and destiny, between cautious planning and a gut feeling that they just met the man who can finally break the curse. The decision they make will not just define their next draft class, it will define their legacy, the rivalry nightmare. Now, let us indulge in the darkest, most terrifying nightmare for every Cleveland Browns fan. Let us paint the picture of the future that the front office risks creating if they fumble this moment. Imagine it is 2 years from now. The Browns have decided to stick with their current plan, passing on the opportunity to draft Shedeur Sanders. He is instead drafted by a hated AFC North rival, the Pittsburgh Steelers or the Baltimore Ravens. The narrative writes itself. He becomes the new face of a historic franchise, a charismatic leader who immediately energizes their locker room and their city. The scene is First Energy Stadium in Cleveland. It's a cold, gray November afternoon. The Browns are in a must-win game to keep their playoff hopes alive. And on the other sideline, wearing the black and gold of the Steelers, is Shedeur Sanders. He is everything he promised to be: poised, accurate, and a born leader. Throughout the game, he methodically picks apart the Browns' defense. He stands tall in the pocket against Myles Garrett's relentless rush, delivering perfect passes to his receivers. He connects with his tight end for a touchdown in the first quarter. He leads a 2-minute drill before halftime that ends in another score. The Cleveland crowd, once roaring, grows quiet, a familiar sense of dread filling the stadium. The final 2 minutes of the game, the Browns are clinging to a slim lead. The Steelers have the ball. Shedeur takes the snap and the pocket immediately collapses. Garrett is closing in. It looks like a game-sealing sack, but at the last second, Shedeur sidesteps him with a subtle, fluid movement, rolls out to his right, keeps his eyes downfield, and uncores a perfect 40-yard spiral that lands in the hands of his receiver in the back of the end zone. Game over. As the Steelers celebrate, the camera zooms in on Myles Garrett, hands on his hips, staring at the man he once anointed on that very same field. It is a look of utter devastation, the look of a man who saw the future and was powerless to stop his own organization from letting it slip away. Browns fans file out of the stadium in silence. Another heartbreaking loss added to the mountain of them, and they know with a sickening certainty that this is just the beginning. They will have to watch Shedeur Sanders, the one that got away, torment their team twice a year for the next 15 years. This is the prophecy of a rival. It is the ultimate consequence of hesitation. It is the nightmare scenario that should keep every single person in the Cleveland Browns front office awake at night. The Browns are standing at a historic crossroads. One path leads to more of the same, the cautious, calculated decisions that have led them to decades of irrelevance. The other path is a leap of faith, a bold move to claim a player who feels like destiny. The players have made their choice. The fans are screaming for change. The future of the entire Cleveland Browns franchise may have been decided not in a draft room, but in the space of a single unforgettable handshake. So I have to ask you, what should the Browns do? Are Garrett and Jeudy right? Is Shedeur Sanders, the chosen one, destined to finally break the curse in Cleveland? Or is this all just a dangerous illusion? Another false prophet in the quarterback desert? Drop your fiery opinions, your bold predictions, and your conspiracy theories in the comment section below. I want to hear it all. And if you felt the drama and enjoyed this deep dive into the NFL's most captivating story, do your part for the channel and absolutely obliterate that like button. Share this video with every football fan you know, and make sure you are subscribed with notifications on, because the saga of Shedeur Sanders is just getting started. The decision looms. Cleveland is waiting. It's time to choose a side.